Not, I call the Minister in reply.
Thank you very much, Speaker. At the outset, I'd like to thank the members for Manly, Monero, Auburn, Oatley, Campbelltown, Wallandilly, Heathcote, Kellyville, Blacktown, and who was also the Parliamentary Secretary for Planning and Public Spaces, the member for Gosford, the member for Wakehurst, member for Balmain, and lastly the member for Cessnock for their contributions to this debate. Speaker, as I said in my second reading speech on this bill, what we are trying to do with this legislation is make a genuine attempt to address housing supply by easing the infrastructure bottleneck plaguing the system and frustrating communities. Those opposite have decided to take the opposed part of opposition and run with it. I actually can't believe that they are intending to vote against this. You know, in politics, we sometimes see some great examples of hypocrisy, but this one, Speaker, this one is right up there. You bought a proposal before the last Parliament that was based on the same recommendations of the Productivity Commission that this bill is based on. You bought a proposal to the Parliament that is based on the same rates that this proposal is based on. You brought a proposal to the Parliament that is based on the same regions as this proposal is based on. In fact, as the member for Monero has said already, the then Treasurer, Matt Keane, said, and I quote, "The Productivity Commission said this is the right policy for New South Wales. We're not going to apologise for investing in the infrastructure that will bring on new housing supply because we want to support first-time buyers being able to get their foot in the door." And as the member for Wakehurst rightly pointed out, the former Minister for Planning and Public Spaces, Rob Stokes, who was in the gallery earlier today, has pointed out very, very correctly that this is not a tax, because you can't establish a tax through a planning law. It's not a money bill. This is a planning instrument. This is a planning instrument dedicated towards making sure there is a funding stream that connects housing growth with infrastructure and jobs-related infrastructure. It's the funding stream that supports communities and supports growth. It's the funding stream. It's the funding stream that made a $1 billion line item in the forward estimates in the government's own half-yearly 2022-23 half-yearly review, which doubled as the pre-election economic statement. So that doubled, for those who need to draw the links, that doubles as the opposition, the then government's policy position that they took to the election, that they campaigned on, that they sought a mandate for. So it strikes me as incredible hypocrisy that they are not supporting this bill today. As I said, the former Treasurer, Mr Keane, had indicated that he supported such a policy. He was right then, and if he's got any principle, he'll break ranks and vote for this bill today. It contains the same level of contributions from developers, but this bill is an improved version. It's an improved version with a focus on housing supply and with the critical transparency measures that this government has baked into the bill. We're more than happy to stand on our conviction that this is a much better way of connecting housing, jobs and infrastructure in a much more transparent way, in a much more auditable way, in a much more clear way than making these connections. And in that vein, Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for Wallandilly for her contribution to the debate and for her amendment. Over the last couple of weeks, we've had the opportunity to have several discussions. As the member for Wollongong, I'm all too familiar with the pressures that are facing the southwest Sydney, not just in Wallandilly, in Campbelltown and in Leppington. And while I touch on Leppington, I want to extend to the House the disappointment that the member for Leppington has expressed to me that he couldn't yet make a contribution to this debate because it's only a couple of hours away from when he does his inaugural speech. However, he wanted me to convey to the House, because he's still silenced by convention, that this is something that he absolutely supports. But to the member for Wallandilly's point, and I acknowledge, as I said, the very real infrastructure needs that she has identified, in particular the Picton bypass. I know it. I've been delayed on it. And I hope that we're able to work together to improve it through time, along with the Picton Road as well, something I've talked about for years. But that's exactly the type of infrastructure priorities that rise to the level of importance to be funded through the Housing and Productivity Contribution Scheme. Speaker, indeed, all the members who have contributed to this, particularly on the government side and from the crossbench, demonstrate the need for the bill and the substantial funds for infrastructure spending that it will make available. And here's the thing. We won't fix the infrastructure problems we've got and which have been let languish under the former government by funding single projects on a one-off basis. We need a fund that helps all of us. We need a connected place. Improvements in one area benefit the rest, whether members opposite like it or not. A new or better road means lives saved and less congestion. A new school or hospital means less travel, means more local jobs and better service provision. That in turn eases the burden on another part of Sydney. So this fund will serve the many, not just the few. Speaker, this fund is about productivity improvements and lifestyle improvements. And the member for Wakehurst also spoke about the needs of a growing community, in particular the current arrangements identified, infrastructure desires and needs identified in the Frenchs Forest Special Infrastructure Contribution. And I can assure the member that I will be keeping existing infrastructure commitments front of mind when I'm coming up with the funding recommendations to make to the Treasurer, and that he and I are taking to Cabinet. It not only will be something that I will do at a personal level, but something that, with the hopefully the success of the member for Wallandilly's amendment, which the government is supporting, that will be a requirement of law as well. Speaker, I'd like to speak some more on the process to be followed to arrive at some of those funding recommendations, helpfully set out in this document produced and online from the department. Now, the infrastructure prioritisation will be done through the Infrastructure Opportunities Plan, which provides the long list of infrastructure needs for each housing and productivity contribution area. The Urban Development Program will provide forums for stakeholders to discuss the growth challenges and the regions where the housing and productivity contribution will apply. Using construction data, dwelling forecasts and inputs from stakeholders, a set of infrastructure priorities will be recommended for each region. The recommendation of each of the regions will feed into an Urban Development Program Oversight Committee. This forum will include representatives of local government New South Wales, peak industry groups and key government agencies. They will consider and balance the competing needs of each region to review and refine the infrastructure priority list. Speaker, a government coordination group will review the growth challenges, agency capital programs and infrastructure priority recommendations from the Urban Development Program Oversight Committee to refine a list of priority infrastructure projects to inform government funding allocations and decisions. Speaker, I would also like to acknowledge in this the comments and contributions and discussions with Local Government New South Wales. I've spoken with Local Government New South Wales, and in a recent statement, the President of Local Government New South Wales, Councillor Daria Turley, said, in good news, the bill also provides up to $1 billion in grant funding over 10 years for councils to deliver local infrastructure such as regional parks and sporting facilities. They're behind it. They understand that this is not undermining local government contributions. This is adding to it. This is adding to it for the benefit of communities overall. Mr. Speaker, this This bill and the conclusion of this debate today has had a long run-up. It's had a long run-up. And I'd like to acknowledge the tireless work of the people in the Department of Planning and Environment who have worked quite literally for years on this bill and the detail that sits underneath it. In particular, I'd like to acknowledge Jonathan Shipp and his team, Kate Spear, Katrina O'Flaherty and Hannah Brettschneider, as well as Madeline Thomas with the drafting of the bill. Speaker, since the New South Wales Productivity Commission's recommendations in 2020, there has been a clear need to do better than the existing infrastructure contribution system. This bill will create a new system for funding and planning for infrastructure, replacing the ad hoc, piecemeal, stop-start system of the past, and it will raise up to $700 million per year when fully operational. Speaker, we need to get moving to deliver the right infrastructure in the right place at the right time to support our growing communities and tackle the looming challenges of the housing crisis. Speaker, I commend the bill to the House.
The question is that this bill be now read a second time. I think we're ready to put the question.